So it's dot six. Of course, we start and eventually let people join in. The session is recorded, so maybe I'm sure after the session there are many more who would want to go through it for sure. Harish, thank you very much for joining. Uh, One thing that I can, I'm also very proud to state that your contribution to the overall Indian IT industry, uh, it was worth reading and going through. And as Jay just mentioned, he's a big fan of the book himself. So probably in the experience that comes out of what you have put forth that we'll be discussing over the next hour or so. But so to all of you, thank you very much as well for joining with another series that of knowledge sharing that we do. Fortunately, the last edition of this, we were able to do it in person. So we'll try to do more and more in-person session for sure while we continue with the Zoom sessions, because there are requests from people across the IMCI cities and chapters that they could attend the session. So therefore, I think this becomes a slightly more convenient option to look at. Now, coming back to this, just to put things in perspective, we are talking about specifically the Indian IT information technology sector, which is where, of course, Harish and the book will also speak about a lot. But just to put things in perspective, I think the estimated GDP contribution of our IT will be around, I think, 275 billion USD, which is maybe also expected to grow with the current growth rates. I think it'll touch 350, 400 billion USD in next 2-3 years. And again, to put things in perspective, and in one of the other discussions we had with Ganesh and also LC talking about it, how about when we talk about 5 trillion or 10 trillion economy that we, in the foreseeable future, that we expect we will grow to, the IT industry itself contributing to $1 trillion in revenue by itself. Now, if I would have said this about 10 years, 20 years back, I would have been the biggest joker in the room. But this is the whole story, right? The last 40 years, the count that we can see when it all started with a young gentleman, I think, to whom a bug was bitten of the Swadeshi movement, I guess. So he shifted his base from US back to India, felt that there's a need to organize the sector, govern the sector better. And quite interesting, right? Few years back, the tax laws, the SEZ, all these concepts were so foreign in all respects. And also the overall understanding of all of this to bring everything together from just a body shopping IT outfit to today really doing a lot of knowledge level, either domestic IT as well as a lot of exports. So a lot of this, I think, is what we can also contribute a lot of this to the value that Harish over the years has brought to the table. For himself, I don't need to really speak about his CV. It's all there. All of you know it quite well. But the interesting part is how do we look at the 40-year journey, which is what I think we will be focusing on. And the book, The Maverick Effect, talks about this journey. So as a format to this talk, we will keep it like a fireside. I have a lot of questions, of course, a lot of curiosity about the book, what it covers. As I said, it also covers a lot about NESCOM, because one of the most significant contribution of Harish was to rope in and get all the key people across the board to form NESCOM. And he apparently was also one of the first elected president of the body. So in the next decade, it started contributing to I think, the share of GDP at that point in time, around 98 to 2000, was 1.5% barely to the contribution, which almost touches about 10% today. And in many ways, I mean, if we have to extrapolate this, the contribution across is a lot, almost about 54 lakh people working in the IT force today, 5.4 million that way, and growing. So the entire journey is what is fascinating, and which I think a book stresses on a lot. And Harish, with your permission, I think this is what we will like to know more and more about. We'll like to dig deeper, and maybe your experiences, the anecdotes, the beautiful ones that you have anyway shared across the book is what we covered. So, as I said, we will continue for 45 minutes or so in the discussion, 45 minutes, post which we'll open it up for Q&A. My suggestion is, if you have questions, maybe just put it to the chat for now. End of the discussion, I'll go through the chat and you can ask the questions yourself. We can just do it that way. So it'll be easy for all of us to coordinate. That said, I think I'm quite excited to get on with the discussion. Harish, one area, of course, while we talk about the book, but in the I mean, 40 years, 50 years, maybe 55 years back, the India then, which sort of sprouted a lot of inspiration, lot of images that you carried at that point in time. What was that? What was your childhood like? And probably what then inspired you to look at the IT journey, which was definitely not the convention at that point in time, for sure.
Okay. State in 1976, I'm going back that far, I came back to India. We had a great job in USA as a database manager with American Can, and before that, Travelers Insurance Company card. And when I came back, the first thing we decided to come back to India, and again for a very simple reason, that to stay with the family. I mean, it had nothing to do with going back to your dharti, tumhe pukar rahi hai, none of that. Right? It was a very simple, straightforward, that you want to be with the family and you come back. In spite of USA was known in those days as a land of paradise, even today it is, land of honey and money and whatnot. And why would you give up that sort of lifestyle and wealth potential and come back to India? Whereas I'll talk about some of that, what India was at that point in time. So when I came back, I wanted to join my dad's business. He was in Bollywood, distributing films outside India. But then I realized it's just not the right business for me. Then I looked at my father-in-law's business. He used to make, or they still make, components for two-wheelers. But when he said you start making zip nipples and I'll be 100% buyer of your product, it was a great, exciting opportunity. So he took me to Kanjur Marg in Bombay. I don't know how many of you have seen that area. And in those days, it's such a, worst place that one could go in terms of to put up a factory. But that was the environment. In that gala, I said, I have not come back from USA to work in such a gala with the labor problems and the kind of labor you work with and so on and so forth. I said, this is not the business I want to be in. And then at that time, I bumped into some individuals and they said, government is opening up a new policy for for import of computer, where you have to give a software export commitment. Now, I being a database manager in USA, I could see that sitting in cubicle in Mumbai, I can do the same work which I was doing in the USA. All I needed was a pipe from my office connecting to the computers of, say, American Can Company. And the labor arbitrage was 15 times at that time. So it was not, it was very simple. There's no real magic behind it. The labor arbitrage was very apparent to us. But then, and that total outsourcing market at that point in time was about $300 billion. But what was accessible to us was hardly 5 million or 10 million. Where the billion and where the millions are. Because we had hundreds of regulations sort of choking the software industry. Now, but before getting into a little bit of software, I'll just talk about my personal life a little bit here, just to give a light context. So my cousin told me that, Harish, you just go back to USA. This is not a country for you. I said, why? I said, here you will not know where your competitor is doing customs chori, income tax chori, excise tax chori. And I know you'll be a straight person. So how will you survive when you do not know your competitor's cost? And it made sense to me what he was saying. And then at one conference where I met Sharu Rangnekar, the famous management consultant, and in a small group where 40, 50 people were there, he said, someone told him, here is a nut who has come back from USA. So he says, welcome, Mr. Mehta. Here you will be a first-class citizen in a second-class country with the third-class administration. And he said, yours and my job is to fix it. And he was a very motivating person for staying back to India. So now I realize if I can't do the typical bricks and mortar business in India. And then it struck me that maybe I do business around technology, because you can't bribe a jump instruction, for example, to go ahead of others. You need to really know the subject and you have to solve the customer problem. So that's where this opportunity came, where you can import a computer by giving an export commitment. So I jumped at it. I applied for the license, got the license, but then I had no money, realized my father was in debt and so on and so forth. I approached my father-in-law. Luckily, he gave me a non-refundable interest-free loan to get the business started. And that's how I started business in the software, so-called industry at that point in time. Software industry didn't exist, frankly. And I basically, being a computer science graduate from USA, I did, by the way, I did electrical engineering from Pune. So I'd gone to USA to do my electrical engineering, and my roommate was one Sardar, and he said, "Pagal ho gaya abhi, now the computer ka jamana aaya, you should do computers." Nobody knew what computer was at that time in India, or all my friends, anybody, many people, nobody said that is a business you should, that's a study you should do. Anyway, but it made sense to me. I did my master's in computer science. And then by that time also, is to again reflect, I had taken one course in, by the way, artificial intelligence. I'm going back to 1970. So that was but that AI was quite different than that AI that we all talk about today. Like at that time, I said hello, and it took 2.5 months for a computer to come back and tell me whether he understood that word hello or not. So there were so many limitations in computer hardware, power, software, and whatnot. So in this technology business, I started, and then I realized that and being a computer science person, and I said the real opportunity is in software product game. So our focus was in the software product game. But then after investing big money from our perspective, we realized that India is not ready for a product game. But opportunity, which I talked about as a labor arbitrage in outsourcing, that was huge. But then again, there were other challenges there. But so that's where at least we can probably shine. And that's how I entered the software services business. And in those days, the technology gatekeepers were scientists and educationists. They would decide the strategy for the country. So they wanted all of us to remain focused on software. Either sunrise industry was computer hardware or the software product. Software services was considered a low-level work. But anyway, we had no other option. We started into services, started doing well, and then realized that there are hundreds of regulations are sort of choking us. There is an opportunity of $300 billion, and how do we do that? And that's where the idea, and there's some other stories in the book also, how I got the idea of forming an association. Here comes Ganesh. Welcome, Ganesh. All right. So the 300 billion. Hi. So that $300 billion so-called opportunity was attracting us. And the only way we said we can solve this is by working with the bureaucracy, by forming an association, going to them, presenting it, and hope that you can start solving these issues. Sort of background there.
Thank you, Harish. Quite interesting to note. I hope your wife keeps an account every time of the borrowed money from your father-in-law, by the way. And also you invoked, or you reminded us of Sharu. He was a dear management consultant and a great guru for all of us. in the IMCI also. Uh, so moving on. So this sort of gives us a good background of probably the start, which let's say 70, 75 was there, 1975, if we can date it by then. Uh, so of course you saw various scattered things across, and we'll probably delve into that. But now let's maybe just get into your book, because I think your book covers that journey beautifully, that the entire period that we'll be getting into. So number one, what was the inspiration? Why did you think at this point in time where probably a lot has happened, a lot has changed, the AI then and the AI today, for example, is completely into two different directions. Um, and so what really inspired you for this, and why did you choose the name Maverick Effect? I mean, what does it really signify for you?
Sure. See, NASSCOM started from our office in 1988. So I have seen how India has changed, let's say,
Yeah.
by sitting in the so-called front row, how India has changed from 78, 80, 88 to where it is today. I have seen how IT industry has changed from 88 to today, and how I know the role NASSCOM played in changing the IT industry, and how NASSCOM is different than many other associations. So if you look at India, for example, 35 years back, government wouldn't trust the businessman. It was a socialistic license raj. Many of you would have experienced that. Profit was a dirty word. So we were just not welcomed by the bureaucracy in general and the policymakers as a business community. What is software? That was not known. To them, software was something, I mean, but conceptualizing an intangible like a software product was very difficult. So they always assume that it's a physical product and be put in a cupboard or something. But is it intangible? They had no idea. And then now you talk about software services. They just didn't understand. To them, software services was like a TV technician's job. Something you go and repair it and fix it or improve on a little bit here and there. So there will be a huge challenge in terms of trying to, and then the software definition for various departments were very different. Somewhere it was not defined, somewhere it was defined in a very different way. So as a result, we had a series of challenges with various taxations and whatnot. So with that sort of, you can say, environment was there at that time. And if you look at, say, if you want to eat fruits, you will say, your dad will say, let's go to Kashmir. That was the environment at that point in time. You want to buy a Bajaj scooter, so when you are going to the college, give the advance. By the time you get married and you have 2 children, Bajaj will deliver the scooter to you. So that was the environment that we lived in of shortages. On top of it, India brand globally was of snake charmers country or a fakir's country. We had even in 91 or 1990, we had mortgaged our gold. We was bankrupt foreign exchange wise to Bank of England. So we didn't even have foreign exchange. Apart from all, then we had Mandal country. So very tough environment of India at that point in time. From there to today, you just talked about some of the numbers. This industry has emerged as a tech powerhouse. Not only tech powerhouse, it's a global tech powerhouse. And it is set the India on a whatever number you want to put in $5 trillion trajectory of economy, whatever you would like to classify it. This industry has brought India to that level. Now that is, I seeing all this, I wanted to put, I believe very strongly, it is IT industry that changed India. Now, if you look at that time, I'm going back 4 or 5 years, I must have asked many people why India changed. And nobody had an answer. Some of you will say that by 91 reforms, someone will say smartphone. Even ask all of you, for example, that why did India change? Or how did India change in the last 35 years? Was it really IT industry? I don't know how many of you will be still doubting it. But to me, I was very clear in my mind that it is, it is that very clear that it is IT industry that changed India. And now, if you look at IT industry, how did IT industry change? I believe very strongly that it is NASSCOM that made a difference to the IT industry. Now, why did the NASSCOM made a difference? So again, there is I call it the secret sauce of NASSCOM, which nobody knows outside. I said that has to be told. So when you put all these pieces together and nobody knows about it, that's where I got enthusiasm. Even though I'm not a writer, I'm not a historian, I'm not an economist, I say someone has to write this history of the country, which is a real major piece. As recently, when I was in Kolkata, someone said, your industry has given economic independence to India. So from political freedom we got in 47 to this industry has given us the economic independence. And why? So this story had to be told. And there is an African proverb that if lions had the historians, the stories of hunting would not have glorified the hunters. So no one has written the story about NASSCOM and the IT industry, I can't blame anybody else. So, and since I was involved from the beginning, and I have a habit of writing my personal notes, anecdotes and whatnot. So that gave me the encouragement to construct the story. And also, it gave me, most of the people who were involved at that time are alive today. So this book was sort of validated, verified by every one of them who was involved in the industry. And like Mr. Today, the sad news came that Mr. Vittal passed away. And Mr. Vittal was one of the key person who brought in that huge change to IT industry and to India from that perspective. So there's a whole I would say almost a chapter on Mr. Vittal and his contribution to IT industry. But not many people know about it, what he did, how he did. And so I've documented all those stories of Mr. Vittal. And so that's why that was the inspiration for me to write the book. Now, why I call it Maverick Effect? Again, Ganesh is here. So I believe one of the things we did very early days was that NASSCOM should, maybe we had studied all the other institutes. I mean, CI, FICCI, SOCHM, IMC, Lions, Rotary, before we started putting the structure of NASSCOM together. A few do's and don'ts. So one of the things which we decided that was NASSCOM must emerge as a independent, neutral, transparent platform, a trustworthy platform. Because in all other platforms, what was happening was they recommend a policy to the government, and then after 3 days, another group from the same association will go and tell the bureaucrats, we don't agree with them. So they were getting completely confused about what policy change to be brought in. And here at NASSCOM, we said, we will have a trustworthy platform. Second thing we decided was we must represent 80% of the top line of the industry. So at that time, because if you don't have a single voice, and if you are 20-30% of the top line, you are just a local association with no real national impact. So that was very clear that we have to have strength in us as a single voice. At that time, even TCS refused to join NASSCOM, we being a sort of a startup in a way. But we said we will not start till Mr. Kohli agrees to join. It took us 6 months to convince Mr. Kohli to join. And once he agreed to join, we started NASSCOM. And so when you look at some of these pieces together, that NASSCOM, IT industry, and India, they're all interlinked and had each other growing to it. But the big thing came after we built this trustworthy platform, all fiercely competing competitors, from Mr. Kohli of TCS, Narayan Murthy of Infosys, Azim from Wipro, everybody, they came on the platform. And we created that trustworthy environment by which everyone started contributing. And in the process, what happened was keeping India, and everybody was learning also, frankly, how to communicate at the aggregate level, at industry level, and not at a company level. But that brought all competitors together. And then they started taking decisions for the benefit of the industry, keeping India first. Now, keeping India first was very critical from our perspective at that point. And we said, okay, we cannot deviate that principle, because whatever we do has to be India driven. Again, it was not frankly out of any jingoistic patriotism then and even today also. It is very, I would say, sheer enlightened self-interest. But the magic we started seeing when these people come together and how we were solving problem and how we were growing exponentially growing the ecosystem. And so when the waves after waves of technology change came, the growth opportunity came, we had massive, we can say, infrastructure ready to leverage it. I'll give you some examples here. For example, NASSCOM wrote at that time, IT policies of the draft 20 states. So parallelly, you had 20 states working on developing the so-called raw material for the IT industry. Various courses were introduced in colleges and so on and so forth. So as the waves came, industry and educational institutes were ready with the manpower, it's a semi-trained, available to the industry. Now, this went to a very different level where we had, some of you may remember that George Fernandez had changed the laws by which he didn't ask, he said no MNCs should have 100% in India. And many MNCs left, many diluted their equity to 40%. And IBM was one of the companies who had left India. Now, seeing the kind of work our industry, whatever little we were doing, let's say in 1988, we were at $50 million. They were extremely happy. These guys are very different. So partly because we had the best of best engineers, IIT Madras, IIT Bombay engineers doing so-called low-end software development work. When you have such a highly talented manpower, you throw any problem at them, they'll solve it. And those problems are very low level because that was only accessible to us at that point in time. So seeing the kind of work our people were doing and of course lower cost, they approached us saying that we would like to set up 100% back office operation in India. But it is since it's a back office, we want 100% ownership with us. It's a confidential work and we don't want any third party. It made sense what they were trying to tell us. But then we all met people like Ganesh and others. Many of them who were there, they said, but they will take away our people paying double the salary. Even the work we are doing for them under the garb of back office, they'll shift it and do it at their center. So why should we allow? And protection was very natural. And the policymakers would easily support you. So, but then because of this platform which we had created, which we had allowed people to speak up, I don't know who. And when the debate went on, somebody said, no, but they will also help us. We do not know, let's say, quality software development because we're all still young and new. So we can learn from them all the quality, different processes at various in the divisions of the organizations, especially in the software development area. Plus, if we build our brand with them, maybe it's a $300 billion big pie which start opening up to us. So why not focus on that? So that gave us the encouragement to look at this seriously as problem. Say, what do we do? What should be our answer to the IBMs of the world? So at that time, I don't know who, somebody in the group said, whoever develops human capital of India is us, and who doesn't is not us. Even an Indian company, if they're not in the business of developing human capital, that is not us. So we said, yes, these MNCs will develop human capital of India. So we should allow them to come in. Now, it was a hard decision, it's a hard recommendation. We went around the table. We asked everybody, Mr. Kohli, Murthy, do you agree? Do you allow your so-called number one competitor to come on your own turf and fight with us? You'll be surprised that everybody said yes. And that's how we approached the government of India. Our finance minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, we gave a proposal to them. Okay, you allow 100% ownership. There, even one of the finance sector, some bureaucrat who was there, he said, "Wapas desh ko bechne aa gaye." Because they were suffering from the colonial mindset. It is East India Company was allowed to come in and then they took over India. Here is a back office, another route by which they are coming in. Another officer said, "Aap kiske dalal ho?" Because nobody would trust you. Why we are suggesting such a odd thing in the marketplace? Now every industry would want protection. Here we are saying no protection. We need this. But we were ready with our facts, data, full analysis. So, and Finance Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh agreed to give 100% ownership. Now, that particular segment was a very simple decision in one way, but this is today $35 billion, employs 1.2 million engineers. They are now grown to a stage where they are representing their parent companies at the board level, co-creating a future for these multinationals sitting in India. And India's ripple effect is massive. And it's a symbiotic relationship between India's third-party service providers and the GCCs, as we call them, global capability centers. So we realize the power of collaborative way of communicating, keeping India first, having that, of course, risk-taking ability, saying we can take on, have the confidence in ourselves, we have the necessary and all. Look at the impact of that single decision. And so that was the differentiator, which I call it Maverick Effect. Okay, these are individuals are each maverick, but when they work together, it creates magic. And that had to be documented and also highlighted because it has nothing to do with IT industry. This applies to any industry. So the title Maverick Effect came out as a result of that.
Thank you, Harish. I think very important that you documented it and in your own words, maybe the lion in a literal sense. We know the story of our lions who could lay this foundation here. Two things, of course, which I can tell you today. So if I move across the Middle East, GCC, European markets, as well as a little bit of Asia, one thing which very clearly comes out today is India and software, the acceptance is just gaining more momentum. And this is what I'm feeling more in last year and a half. We serve a lot of banking customers on the risk management space. And surprisingly, even there, the awareness of executives who are from another country to understand and appreciate what an Indian IT and the quality and all these aspects would bring in. So that acknowledgement always happens these days, at least. So I'm sure, I mean, some of the things that you mentioned then are really getting the validations today.
Chandan, just to add here, another story in it, completely from different perspective, that about 15 years back, I was attending TiCon at San Jose, Silicon Valley. And every year I would visit TiCon. So this time also I was visiting there. I took a taxi from San Jose.
This was 15 years back. This is 15 years back you're talking
Correct. Yeah, 12, 15 years back. Yeah.
Right.
So the taxi driver was Sardarji, mid-age Sardar. So he asked me, "आप कहाँ से आए हैं?" I said, "I'm from Mumbai." So आप क्या करते हैं? I said, "I'm from software industry." Then suddenly he said, "आपने हमें इज्जत दिलाई है." So I'm scratching my head. What have we done to this mid-age Sardar, giving him pride? So I asked him, "आप क्यों ऐसे कहते हो?" He says, "Today any American who travels my taxi, he or she thinks that I'm a PhD student doing part-time taxi driving." So that was the brand IT or software industry had built around the world. So in Silicon Valley in specific. So it is a place where I live. Is also there are many minorities live in that area. But today, I as an Indian now is equal to them. So that's where we realize the impact of what we have done, not realizing, but to even a common Indian somewhere else in the world, you end up creating a pride. So when you talk about banking, every other sector, there are different ways it has impacted. Sorry.
Sure. No. Thank you very much. In fact, this was what I was getting into. So of course we'll move forward, but just before that, I have one question as we move to the Y2K side of it. So that will be the other question that I'll get into. But before that, you mentioned about the Mavericks. I mean, of course, we have Ganesh also with us, and LC, of course, was also very closely connected with us, as well as FC Kohli, Mr. FC Kohli, etc., and the likes. During the NESCOM days, and you write about this in your book as well, giving some anecdotes about it. So as you got all these mavericks together, the whole uh, the whole era at that point in time across the world was not what it is today. I'm not talking about technology. I'm essentially also talking about the way businesses were done, conducted, and sort of the way India will be taken may not be so serious at that point in time as it is today. So if you can narrate maybe few stories of getting those mavericks, 6 months was your persuasion to Mr. Kohli. So I'm sure to get a whole lot of bunch, there would be multiple uh, interesting stories which would have come out. It wouldn't have been an easy job as it looks today, I'm sure. So if you can share some insights, some stories, some interesting facts which emerged at that point in time as the NESCOM was born.
In the beginning, when we used to meet, I don't know whether I've documented it or not, but when we used to meet, people will not open up. We were all scared. Industry was small, few customers, and we were scared that if I open up and talk about my problem, which is industry problem as such, but by mistake my customer name comes out in some conversation, all my competitors will go tomorrow and camp there for the business. Or they will talk about the problem I'm talking about, saying, hey, we have solved it, they have not solved it, and whatnot. So there was a, you can say, fear to communicate. We had not learned to communicate at the industry level or at an aggregate level. We were still too much company focused persons. So we didn't know what to do, frankly. So at that, we had another co-founder of NASCOM named KV Ramni. He was big at heart. So at previous night in his hotel room, he would invite everyone to come there. And he says he'll offer drinks and dinner at his expense. He said, please come and enjoy here. So we would all go there, sit there, hope, and not talk about business. And just know each other as an individual and start hoping that you, as a human level, you start interacting. Even Dr. Prakash Hebalkar of Tata Burrows or Tata Unisys later on, he called me once and he said, Harish, are you running a serious software organization or a social organization? I said, Prakash, you know what happens during the day. People are not even communicating. How do you make them talk? So, and we need to build the trust. And see, we had a serious challenge of trustworthiness with the bureaucrats. So first we have to have trust amongst each other before we even go and tell the government something. So that's how we started, because people started opening up over a drink, as we say, and then build relations, personal relations. Then we introduced what we call a yearly retreat, where you and your spouse come together. So we all spend 3 days together. We keep half a day for strategy planning for the year, and the remaining time friendly, building relations with each other. So we had to do a number of such small things to create comfort and confidence level. But yeah, fundamentally, it had to be a trustworthy platform. None of these issues go out of the, and that was a very basic principle that we can argue internally. A decision, we will not wash our internal dirty linen in public. We'll all stay with the same single voice. Because that was very critical for us. Bureaucrats, and today also I feel so critical that if the, like say, if you look at the startup world today, which is not together, so the bureaucrats tell us that they are like Rajput warriors. They fight amongst each other and somebody else benefits. There's no cohesive approach in any area, from crypto to gaming to fintech to name. There is nobody has a vision for India. No one is telling us how they're going to, even if they have some vision, how they're going to reach there and why this can policies, it would be conducive. There is no such game plan. So now the policymakers decide in their own way how to do it. So you saw this morning they announced some import of computers banned. I don't know who gives a knee-jerk reaction. Why would they do such a stupid thing? I would say retrograde state, frankly. But hardware industry is not united. So we don't know who is driving and why it is being driven. So there are challenges from that perspective. So we were very clear that we all have to remain together, united as a single voice. And fortunately, with the great people around us, we had a Devang Mehta, again, as our calling Sutradhar. Again, he was a great uniting force with all of us and maintaining it. And it went to I just give another funny story here that later, about 8-10 years, Bill Gates was coming to India. And so we said, this is a great opportunity for us to build Indian IT industry and build India's brand. So Bill Gates should make few great statements about India and the Indian IT industry. So we said, let's build, first of all, internally, build our brand. So let's invite the chief ministers. So we wrote to, I don't know, maybe 15 states chief ministers. Everyone agreed to come. Not only they agreed to come, their PA started calling us saying, my chief minister will sit next to Bill Gates. Now, how do you find 15 Bill Gates? How do you get 15 chief ministers to be sitting next to Mr. Bill Gates? So Devang called me, Harish, what do we do? I said, let's have a round table as a design so that at least everyone will feel they're equal on that table. Then Keshubhai Patel from Gujarat says in Gujarati to us, Dikra par hu to Bill Gates ni baju mat basis. Now we are worried now. What do we do? Because Devang was supposed to be at one place and Chandrababu Naidu was our strongest supporter. So we wanted to honor him and respect him, to have him sit the next. So Keshubhai cannot be there. So we found a solution. Keshubhai will sit right opposite of Bill Gates. And we told Keshubhai, Bill Gates, whenever he speaks, he'll look at you and then speak. So you will get that. A small game we had to play just to keep everyone together. And we kept doing it non-stop. We had to do it. Ganesh can tell you many such stories during his time with how it happened. But in the beginning, it was very critical for us to bring together. And today, all of us are great friends now. Even though we compete, we are as good friends as any other. I mean, okay.
Oh, wow. So fascinating. In fact,
If
Ganesh
I
did.
can just interrupt for a minute, Chandan.
Yeah.
I mean, I still remember I moved from manufacturing to IT because of Harish Mehta. A chance meeting with him in 1984 when he was running Hinditron. And even then he was like, it doesn't matter to me who you buy from, so long as you buy Indian computers. I mean,
Wow.
it was really amazing to listen to a man saying that. And then, of course, I was an MD of Aptech at one time, and this is 1994. And suddenly, along with Devang Mehta, for the first time I met him, he walked into the press conference. He sat down in a corner, listened to me. End of it, he said, look, you speak well. I want you to speak for the industry, not just for your company. I mean, these are the persuasive people. After that, I've never looked back at NASCOM. So I think that's what makes the difference of wanting to get people together.
Indeed. I mean, the 40 odd Mavericks to maybe today, maybe 400, 4,000 of such.
Absolutely.
With the rub off effect.
Absolutely. Correct. Yeah. But again, he talked about Devang, for example. An interesting story about how I recruited Devang. He had written one article in Economic Times about software exports. So it made sense to me with the nuances of some I could see that he understands. Not many, but some he understood well. So I said, who is this person? I thought Mehta, since he was from Delhi, must be a Punjabi probably. So when I met him in Delhi, he was a Gujarati. So anyway, we hit it off well. We started meeting and whatnot. And then one day I saw in some place, he was reading a newspaper and the tears were in his eyes. I said, Devang, why are you? I said, tears in your eyes. Why are you crying? Then he tells me in Gujarati, Apro desh kyare sudharse. When will our country change? I said, why are you saying it? So there was some corruption case. And then I found that he graduated from, he did his schooling from Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan in Delhi. So probably some of those values were inculcated in him from that level. And he was very patriotic. So when we were looking for someone to run NASCOM, and another story there, how we had somebody else and whatnot. But then we wanted to replace him. Now I approached Devang. I said, would you like to join NASCOM? He said, are you mad? I mean, I have a great cushy job here as a EDP manager in Orissa Cement. Why would I work for a non-profit, which also I don't know whether NASCOM will survive or not survive. I'll be back on the road after a year and so. Why should I join? I said, but Devang, you are so patriotic. You have such a, you feel so emotionally for India. To us, it's a great opportunity for you to, and we frankly didn't have that vision of today's $250 billion or anything. Our vision was not even frankly $1 billion. When we talked to Mr. Vittal about $1 billion, he says, young man, do you know how many zeros are in a billion? So our vision was even not there. It grew and it As we moved on, it kept changing. But at that point, so I told Devang, listen, you want to change India, you want to contribute. Here is the glad platform. Then he said, but can you pay me my salary? Now, he was earning 25,000, if I'm not mistaken, at Orissa Cement per month. So I came back to Executive Council of NASCOM, all my colleagues, and saying, listen, here is a challenge. Because that time, the highest salary being paid to the executive director of an association was 5,000. I think Tarun Das was getting 5,000 or something like that. So who are we to going to pay such a big number? And so, but our industry in that sense, luckily, believes in paying for talent. So they gave me a free encourage. You go and negotiate. We must have him. Because many of them knew Devang. So they all realized, they know, okay, he is the right person for NASCOM to lead. So I went back to Devang. I said, here is a challenge. I said, okay, we will pay you 15,000 a month, per month. You work 4 days a week. 3 days you be a consultant, earn 10,000. And luckily for us, he took that risk. Oh, he joined. It's a completely different story. We had this Dr. Sumantra Gosal from London School of Economics. He used to say that 1,000 years of downward spiral of India was arrested by the Indian IT industry, led by NASCOM, and Devang was the Sutradhar driving it.
Wow. Wow.
So that's how, I mean, yeah.
So fascinating. Because these are the sort of things that we don't really hear what the nuances, the inside story. So I think, Harish, the other part as you move on in your book, which I was just speaking about. So that was about 1.2% in the GDP contribution around 98, 99. And we were approaching Y2K essentially, which was, I think, to start with, an event which had a lot of uncertainty, but it really helped to pivot from especially from an IT industry point of view. So that was sort of an event which completely helped us to take off. So what was your view? I mean, as you write also in your book, and your general views around NASCOM, the general IT industry, how collaborative, and what was the inside story, and what took us to today, the hockey stick kind of a growth from there?
See, first on the Y2K, this is my, again, personal view. If you ask anybody, people say it is Y2K that helped IT industry. Now, it did help. I'm not saying no, but didn't help, frankly, in the real sense, in the terms of numbers and whatnot. And to me, when I look back, I started analyzing why people are saying Y2K, Y2K, Y2K. My crude analogy would be to the police commissioner, where there is a murder case and there is a pressure on him to explain why the murder took place and arrest somebody. So before let's say, my book, people didn't know how to explain the growth of India or how to growth of IT industry. So the 91 reforms, Y2K became the storytelling points. And people who are not from the industry, who had not been involved, engaged, and then they get supported. So as a result, that became a story, very popular, that it is reforms and in Y2K, which frankly, they will just connected the points to come up with a nice story. So that is my viewpoint. Industry players may have a different perspective. Because in terms of numbers, our industry hardly grew. We were growing, say, 30-40% during the Y2K period 2 years before. We again grew at the same rate. There was no impact on the rate. We're doing Y2K work. I'm not saying no. But where I believe where it helped India or IT industry was in a couple of different ways. That Y2K created awareness globally, especially in the New York NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange, that services as a business is to be looked at seriously. So companies like Accenture and other IBMs, they suddenly got limelight from the services perspective. So companies which were getting valued at 0.7 of the top line in the services industry started getting valued at 1.3, 1.5 times, which gave a boost to the services as a business brand. Now, from our Indian perspective, again, we are the best of best engineers joining our industry. And they were doing, let's say, the Y2K work also. And they were pleasantly surprised that somebody will give me some old phone and then say, I do not know whether my hardware is Y2K compliant or not. Can you figure it out? And we were ready to take up such assignments. We had no idea. But yeah, once you have some base data, you start doing the research, homework, find out the PCBs and whatever you have done, and you go back and solve and say, yeah, it is compliant. They were, I mean, completely zapped in terms of the capabilities our engineers were demonstrating. So that when the next wave came off, next wave I think was Java wave or open source wave, they needed the resources. We all had entry into the Fortune 500 in some way. So they banked on us to build on that. Parallelly, we had educational manpower on Java and whatnot. So that's how the, what do you call, the inflection point. And there were many such inflection points, even like in, because of Y2K, again, partly, Bill Clinton increased the H-1B visas from some 92,000 to 198,000 with a 3-year timer in built into it. So that again gave a big boost to the industry.
Yeah.
So like that, there are every point you can say there were inflection point for the industry to grow.
That's true. So I know on time, I'm keeping an eye on the time, and there are so many questions that is still there. Maybe I'll try to attempt some of it. And this is maybe let's just slightly delve into the not so happy story, because again, around the mark, there'll be impediments, which is a usual story as we move forward. So, which is where the Satyam fiasco that happened at that point in time. And of course, that was another era in which as an industry, it really brought up the collaborative efforts which were there. And I'm sure NASSCOM would have a role to play, because Satyam anyway, at that point in time, was a big elephant in its own way for it to go, go the journey it did. But yet at the same time, not having an dominoes effect in the whole system. I think we would want to really know about the NASSCOMs of that time during this crisis, and maybe your experiences around it.
I think frankly, Ganesh is the best person because he was the chairman of NASSCOM at that time.
Oh, yes.
The same thing happened. I'll tell you, but what I've written in the book, to me, the way we manage Satyam is the finest hour of NASSCOM. And I'll tell you why. Because when the Raju's letter came out about accepting the fraud, when we as a industry, all the CEOs on a phone said, had a call together and said, what do we do? So the first reaction from us was, why should we get involved? It's an issue which the board of directors of Satyam has to worry, or the auditors should have taken care, or the shareholders has to take. So it is not our job to go and step into it. So
it's a governance problem.
Satyam. Yeah, it's a natural thing. And then industry, as we don't really have a role to play. If they've done something wrong, we are not the government of India to, worry about. And we can express our what the lacuna and whatnot, but we can't go and fix it. We have no powers, nothing. But again, because of this collaborative nature of the competitors, somebody said, if Satyam collapses, Satyam has customers and they have done applications for these customers where there are millions of transactions taking place every day. If Satyam collapses, this application may also collapse. And these millions of transactions would be left hanging. That will impact millions of customers. And if that story goes, if that happens, India will never get business. So we were extremely concerned about India Inc. brand getting impacted if Satyam collapses. Of course, another concern was also that we will be all known as a fraudulent company. Like other day only someone was saying Hyderabad had a tough time getting business for the next following 2-3 years after the Satyam fiasco. But we were concerned about India Inc. brand. So at that time, we said we need to save India Inc. brand. So Som Mittal, who was the president, he met Corporate Affairs Minister, Mr. Gupta, that I want to have an urgent meeting with you. He had called Kamal Nath and some other ministers in the meeting. And Satyam and Som explained, here is the reason why we would like you to save Satyam. So even their first reaction, what we heard was same. Like Kamal Nath said, "Bhaad mein jaye Satyam." वो उन लोग ने board of directors are careless and whatnot. Why should we get into it? It is not Indian government's job. But anyway, everybody understood the problem. They said, "Give us a few days, we'll get back to you." Then what I heard was that they talked to, again, Manmohan Singh, at that time was the Prime Minister. Manmohan Singh gave a green signal saying, yes, we must save Satyam. Then they studied internally what it means. So they said it will take us 2 months. They talked to Mr. Bhave, who was the SEBI chairman, saying, can we take over? He said, we can, but then these are the laws we need to change. Cabinet has to pass this, and then only we can take over Satyam. So they came back to us saying, here is our plan. Now the challenge was, we all taught in management that when one company is weak, you go like a vulture, go attack it, take away their people in a services game, or take away their customers and whatnot. That's a very natural way, is what we've been taught to do it. So we all sat together and said, what do we do? And you'll be surprised that as a collective wisdom of the group at that time was, okay, we must save Satyam, and none of us for next 2 months will approach proactively any customer of Satyam, nor we will proactively approach any senior manager of Satyam to join us. At that time also, I remember one company, he said, are you mad? This is a golden opportunity for me to double my business. Why are you stopping me? But we don't know what happened in reality, frankly, but we did manage. We tried all our best. Everyone tried their best to save Satyam. And then we went back to the government saying, this is what NASSCOM industry would contribute. Apart from whatever resources you need, we are all there. And then they picked Kiran. They came up with a plan to take over Satyam, put Kiran Karnik as a chairman of Satyam. And then, of course, Ganesh, Som, they all became sort of brand ambassadors of Satyam, going around the country, around the world, telling their customers, and they're saying that industry will support and try to save Satyam. You don't panic when this is happening. And after 2 months, Tech Mahindra took over, because there's such a smooth transition at that point in time. Maybe Ganesh, you may want to add here.
No, you're absolutely right. I remember meeting, lots of CIOs telling them that, look, India is perfectly fine. And interesting, you mentioned that I had lunch with the country head of one of their big competitors. And it took me like 2 hours of lunch to tell him, boss, I know the customer is just down the road, but don't go and poach. So you're right. I think we all to Som and Kiran Karnik. I think Kiran, Deepak Parekh, all these people who are there in Hyderabad making it happen. It's actually an amazing story of India coming together.
And there is nowhere in the world such a story has happened.
I think this is the real jewel. I think it should.
Yeah.
There should be more written about it even now, because I think this really shows the mettle that as an industry we all would stand together and maybe make this transition. You're right. There's no other parallel story which we can hear elsewhere.
That's why in my book I'm comparing with Apollo 13. Sir, we have a problem here. That's why I'm putting that as an analogy. And I'm ending by saying it was the finest hour of NASSCOM.
It indeed was. So final question from my side, of course, from a time point of view as well. So now over the years, maybe let's just fast forward a bit from there to let's say India in its 76th year as we are approaching, to let's say the COVID related time frame that we have crossed, the digital revolution, and Ganesh in its own way in its contribution towards digital India as a mission, and you generally from an industry perspective and from your own company perspective, the way the newer technologies are coming with maybe AI then and today, or gaming as an industry, and definitely the whole nuance of the technology space has changed in this 40 years today. And of course, we all understand the rate of this change will be much faster, because that's how it will always be. Next 2 years, 4 years will definitely be faster. But it definitely is quite evident that we are sort of well equipped with this variable which will come in the future. We probably have the skill sets to an extent, and which can be developed even further. The resilience is something that we have all seen during the tenure, and Jay in his book also spoke about the resilience uh, in general in an Indian economy point of view. So with that, finally, Harish, what is your view and your thought around this? Plus, maybe the next 5-10 years that you could see, and maybe towards the dream, if we can make 1 trillion in terms of the contribution from an IT standpoint to the Indian economy. If you can share your views around that.
Chandan, you're asking the wrong person. I'm a techno-optimist. I have seen India from snake charmers to where it is today. So I can see it will just, there's nothing to stop us. We're an unstoppable engine now. And there are so many new fantastic technologies available. And the permutations, combinations of these exponential technologies, if leveraged right, has potential to, even existing, I'm saying, not the next level, to solve most of India's problems. But yeah, we need to put our heads together, have a, let's say, generation of million technopreneurs who would take up the metal and then help them, mentor them, fund them, go ahead and solve the problem, and create an environment, not like the knee-jerk reaction by the policymakers. Need to avoid all that. So in my book, I have suggested there is a last chapter about Sone Ki Chidiya version 2.0, where I have identified, from my perspective, the structural problems of India. And I said, if India has to become Sone Ki Chidiya 2.0, these are the 10 issues we need to solve them. So starting with the creating think tank, breaking the nexus of Lala, Neta, Danda, Judge, yeah, really killing the whole progress of the whole country, I would say. Because you see that behind every decision, we do not know who that nexus is, driving it for whose purpose, not keeping citizen at the center. So like that, there are a number of challenges are there. So I would say that we need both cultural transformation also to happen at the same time to take advantage of these technologies. Technology is there, we have the skills and all, internet is all there to solve, but we need to build the cultural layer on top of it so that properly balanced way it develops.
And also the Mavericks that we continue to need it also from where you have established to probably the newer sort of generation which is now continuing, and I can see, of course, from the way I follow maybe Harish, you and Ganesh and a host of others, that you are engaging with probably the young generations to sort of keep that fire moving, because as you mentioned, culture will be one of the most critical aspect. Collaboration will be, because historically, as a country, we hadn't been great collaborators. And this was, of course, if time permitting, I would have delved a little bit into the history, because we have never been good collaborators. We could have done phenomenal if we would have. I mean, that's a history from the white Sahab to the brown Sahab, and then the whole transition.
Why before the Raja and Praja? I mean, it started from
exactly,
there.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, yeah. So I'm quite. I mean, you guys are to be celebrated with the way and things which has translated or transpired today. And I hope, I mean, this continues and we really grow. And the 1 trillion, that the number, of course, in itself, we definitely are well set to. So very happy to note this part.
So, Chandan, if I may just
Yes.
interrupt for a second, I
Yes,
think
please.
it's not just the 1 trillion that will get the effect of the Mavericks. It's the 5 trillion GDP. I mean, just to give you an idea, today I chair Honeywell in India. And if you look at our capability centers in 4 cities, I mean, they're doing right from sustainable oil development, aero engine simulation. And this all happened because of what Harish said. I mean, we built capability, and the GCCs today are in so many segments that I think even the PLIs and the future of manufacturing in India will get driven by that. So I think it's a radiating effect that you're seeing, which will really play out.
Wow, wow. So that's, I think, excellent. Since we are almost on time, and on the chat I don't see any questions, I'm presuming if there are some, yes, maybe we'll take 2 questions, please. Starting with, yes.
I don't have a question per se, but Harish, I don't know whether you recollect. I am Sharad Dole from Tata Technologies, Tata Motors. I think we traveled together to Novel Corporation's
Wow.
conference in Salt Lake City in 2004. And it was a wonderful experience getting associated with you. And thanks for rekindling the memories of Hinditron days and our digital VAX 11750 installations and all that. And then further association in terms of novel technologies.
Yes,
And my wife, she happens to be a member. She was a member of IMCI Pune chapter, and she keeps getting the mail. So she said, Harish sir is there. I said, definitely, I would like to join. So thanks a lot for a nice, and we would really like to know more about your book. Hopefully, it should be available on Amazon.
Yes.
Yeah, it is available on Amazon. Yeah.
Thank you,
So,
Sharad.
wish you all the best, and thanks for reconnecting. Thank you.
Thank you,
you.
Sir,
Sharad.
I would like to
Bharti has
compliment
important-
you for the Satyams, means other side, what you have said.
Yeah.
It was really very gratifying to know that yes, in our
See, there's another third side also.
Oh.
So I had a similar fireside chat with Mr. Deepak Parekh. So Deepak Parekh, I said, you give your version of what happened. And he said, Harish, you are saying that none of you approach anybody for coach people or customers. So when I took over as a independent director of Satyam, I saw all of you everywhere. I said, but Deepak, we're at 2 months moratorium. So after that, I don't know what happened. So everyone tried their best. So that's also another side of it in terms of, then we had a Hemendra Kothari in that meeting. He talked about why Raju had to come up with the letter. So he had asked for some loan from DSP, Merrill Lynch or whatever at that time. So as a part of due diligence, they found that the cash was not matching the bank balance or something. So they called him, and then Hemendra said, we told Raju that we'll have to report to SEBI, because as per some regulations, they have to, if they find any discrepancies, they have to report to SEBI. So that's where Raju realized he is now caught in some way and came out with the letter. So that I know, right? There are many such different versions.
Yeah.
But there are still means two stories. That one says that he still is calling shots. They say no, he is now out of it completely. All this, really don't know.
So
I think
Bharti with her
Deepak,
IPR cap, I think IP cap. that she
Deepak
wears.
has a question. Dr. Deepak has a question, Chandan.
Yeah,
He's been raising his hands.
It's not a question. Thank you very much, Mr. Harish, for a wonderful session. It's an enlightening session, rather. Good experience sharing. And greetings from Germany. I'm now in Germany. We have established our organization over here for the last 3 years. And you said it absolutely right that today in Germany, India is being considered, whenever we go out, are you from IT? This is the first question which they are asking.
Correct.
The inflow has increased tremendously. At my place, I see every week at least 5 to 6 families which are coming or getting jobs in Germany. I'm staying in Essen, near to Düsseldorf. We see a huge surge in this. The another good news in this is the German government has reduced the qualification norms of Indian IT entrepreneurs. They have also reduced the qualification norms, and they have also increased the pay package for them.
Yes.
And they have also reduced the visa eligibility from 5 years to 3 years as a permanent residency.
Okay.
Now, this has all happened in month of 23rd of June, if I am not mistaken. And this is all a good news for all of us.
Exactly.
And there are a lot of people who are coming. I only wish Indian consulates to give visa as fast as possible. There is a queue of 3 months or 4 months, but the skill development at the skilled workers level, IT from India stands at #1 position as far as Germany is concerned. So spread this word across. No need to be afraid of German language, German culture. and no need to go to US.
Thank you.
That
Thank
was a nice,
you,
that
Dr.
was a nice recruitment pitch.
So,
Yeah, but I am
as-
not from IT industry and I
That's
am not
fine,
from
that's
the
fine.
recruitment side.
Yeah,
But
no,
I
just
thought of
kidding,
sharing
just kidding,
you
Deepak, just
because-
kidding. But you're right.
Thank you,
Kids are welcome
Dr. Deepak.
everywhere,
I
yeah.
think, I mean, it's again sort of gives us that validation of what is going on and happening. Of course, to all of you, I will share the link of Harish's book also,
Yeah.
as well, along with the session recording, etc. So with this, I think as we are coming, a lot of questions, as I said, I'm sure Harish would still have a lot to say. We hope maybe in the upcoming session we get a chance to.
I'll end by one story anyway. So again, this goes back 10, 12 years. How this collaborate and compete helps the industry. One, I give an example of how GCC took birth and gave such a huge contribution. Look at the other way around. That China wanted to compete with India and become #1 in tech services. They also saw the kind of contribution we were making in the country. So they appointed Foresters as an agency to come up with a master plan for China to become #1 in tech services. Now, John McCarthy, the CEO of Forrester, and he used to come to our NASSCOM event before that for another 5, 7, 10 years, whatever. He used to be a regular visitor and a speaker. Being a research organization, we also would like to know what the trends are. And he's a great speaker also. So he told the Chinese government, you cannot compete with India till you create NASSCOM equivalent association. So they said, why? What is so different about an association? He said, I have not seen anywhere in the world. IBM, Accenture, Capgemini, TCS, Infosys, Wipro, all competitors sitting together across the table, solving industry issues, keeping India first.
Brilliant.
So you cannot compete with such a segment if you have such. So that's where I realized, frankly, the power of an association from a different perspective. If you build that platform, yeah.
Great story. So thank you, Harish, for this. Jai, request to you.
Yeah,
if
so
you can
just
do
a few
the
words,
honors.
Harish. First of all, for the most of you, this is a book, like I said in the beginning, which I think offers lessons to all industries, not just what NASSCOM has done. It needs to be replicated in all sectors, and therefore I'm a big fan of this book, and I talk about this book to all the people. And frankly, if there is one leader, business leader in Harish's case, we think of leader means political leader, who's crisscrossing the country, spreading this message. I often pull Harish's leg that he's on a similar, speaking tour. For instance, next week he's in, I think, Baroda, Ahmedabad, Jaipur, Chandigarh, and Bangalore. 5 cities next week. All the places, universities, students, industry bodies inviting him, to say, come and share your secret sauce. And he's spreading it very liberally. Messages are there. And if I may add, Harish, one of the wonderful things that, that is a reflection, that is reflected in the book, as well as, of course, the work of NASSCOM, is that this has never been a place where one or two individuals have dominated. The very fact that Ganesh shared some stories, etc., is a reflection that this is a platform where many leaders have allowed the limelight to be shared, which actually has made the event and the NASSCOM much stronger body. So thank you to all of you. All of you are connected. All of us are connected to. There is nobody who's not touched by IT. And I think thank you for the time, and please read the book and spread the message. Thank you, Chandan.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Good evening, good morning, and good day to all of you.
Thank you.
Bye.